Okay, so for my creative counseling activity, I decided to go with a Thumball. So a Thumball is just a therapeutic ball that is used in play therapy, where there are several segments that contain prompts, such as like questions, or just other statements that encourage communication and reflection. There are several ways where you can utilize a Thumball, but the way I would use it in a counseling session is just by like introducing a game of catch, where myself and the client would kind of develop like a therapeutic relationship in a way that is like has minimal pressure, where the client can kind of just engage, like physically, kind of get their body moving, and then also kind of building rapport with the questions and the prompts. So following along with that, there is a list of ways where using a Thumball can be useful. One of the ways is that it encourages communication between the client and the counselor, whereas these questions and prompts can be kind of utilized as the child catches the ball. So the way it works is you throw the ball, the child will catch the ball, and you can say wherever your right thumb landed on is the question or prompt that you will answer. So for example, my thumb landed on what's the funniest cartoon you've ever seen. And so the child would answer the question, and then following that, you could ask some follow-up questions or make a comment to relate to the client. Or you can ask the client, okay, now it's your turn to throw the ball. And that way you're just kind of like kind of building a connection with the client, getting them to engage with you. Another way utilizing the ball can be useful is it promotes comfort between the client and the counselor. And once again, it's just kind of like when you're engaging in a game, the child will get comfortable with you and kind of like open up and become more relaxed. It feels less formal, and it's just like a fun activity. This can be especially helpful for clients who are more on the shy or introverted side. Using a Thumball can also guide exploration. So, when you're using the questions and prompts on the ball, it helps to kind of navigate the conversation kind of towards specific topics, such as feelings or family dynamics, daily experiences, and the structure of kind of letting the questions on the ball kind of guide you provides a safe and organized way to explore kind of deeper issues without the child becoming overwhelmed. The ball also enhances focus. So for children who have attention difficulties, kind of having something that's tactile and interactive can help keep the child engaged in the session. They're more likely to stay focused on the activity and respond thoughtfully to the prompts. Playing a game of catch helps to build trust, as it's more of a playful approach, and then it helps to build rapport between the counselor and the child. This is an easy way to make a child feel like they're playing a game instead of engaging in like a therapeutic session. It promotes emotional expression. So when the children are answering like the prompts or questions, they're encouraged to think about their feelings, experiences, and thoughts. This can also help them process emotions that they might not be able to express in like conversation, and just like a regular conversation, or more of like a counseling approach. Another way the Thumball activity can be helpful and more integrative is, it kind of attends to clients or children who might be nonverbal or struggle with like communication, because it's kind of prompted, and the language is kind of very basic. In terms of cultural factors, there are several factors to be considered. One factor is the content. So you can find balls that are centered around different topics, or different kind of forms of questions. When picking a ball to use with your clients, it's important to consider the client's culture and whether the questions are culturally appropriate and resonate with the child's background. Questions that are based from like a Western kind of social norms and values might not align with the experiences of a client who comes from a different cultural background. For example, if there's a question on the ball that says, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" that might not be relevant for a child who comes from a collectivistic culture where individuality is less promoted and encouraged. So they might not be able to answer like, "Oh, what do you want to be when you grow up?" because it's not something that they're encouraged to think about. You also want to think about how you want to customize the ball. So adapting the questions might be helpful to include a range of cultural norms, values, and experiences. You want to think about the language barriers. You might have a client that is, not fluent in English, or might have a different primary language. And, if you buy a Thumball that has only English questions, you might need to have a translator present, or you might have to translate the questions in advance, or buy a ball that's in a different language. Another factor to consider is perceptions of play therapy. In some cultures, play therapy is not as recognized or advocated for, in which case you might have to explain to the parents or kind of to your client, like the research evidence supporting play therapy and like how you want to utilize it in session and what advantage it has for you and your client. In terms of traditional approaches, some cultures prioritize talk therapy or like therapy that involves authority figures or parents, family members, in which case you might adapt the game to include family members or other familial perspectives to kind of show respect for that culture. You also have to consider respecting cultural norms and boundaries, which include sensitivity to trauma. So for individuals who have a history of trauma, certain topics on the Thumball might trigger distress. So for example, questions about safety or authority figures could be sensitive for a child who experienced violence. It's important that when you're kind of using the ball to engage in kind of play therapy, that you're paying attention to your client's cues and their kind of emotional state as the questions are kind of coming up. Okay. Also, in some cultures, children might not be encouraged to talk about their feelings or openly express kind of things that are going on within the family, especially in front of people that they don't know. If a child is raised this way, it could be expected that they would have a hard time just openly answering questions to a counselor. So it might be more important to focus on kind of the initial building of like trust and safety before introducing a game like this. It's also important to consider whether a client comes from an individualistic or collectivistic culture. Because if you purchase a Thumball that focuses a lot on individuality, it's not going to be as effective because the client can't relate to that perspective. So in that case, you would want to kind of pick a ball or create a ball that considers collectivistic cultures more For example, instead of asking, what is your biggest dream? Maybe you would ask, what do you think your community needs most? Another thing is to consider gender dynamics. So in certain cultures, the expectations of gender roles can influence how children respond to the questions. In some cultures, boys and girls may be expected to behave differently or might be socialized to express emotions in different ways. So it's important to kind of understand how those gender expectations or gender norms can influence your client's comfort level with the questions and what they feel comfortable answering. So in terms of cultural strengths and values, you can use the Thumball to celebrate a culture's resilience. So you might include questions that highlight cultural heritage, family values, traditions, which will provide your client the opportunity to express their pride in their culture and connect with therapy. It not only affirms their identity, but allows the counselor to kind of draw on to the child's cultural assets during the therapeutic process. So another thing to keep in mind with the Thumball is that it's flexible and adaptive. So the counselor can be flexible with the way they use it. If you're taking cultural considerations into account, you could change the questions. You can change how kind of you play the game. So maybe you can involve family, or you could utilize appropriate symbols, art, or metaphors from the individual's culture. In terms of the weaknesses of using a Thumball, again, it kind of just comes into consideration. Is the Thumball you're using appropriate? Is